Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're watching this from on the interweb, someplace on YouTube or Facebook, which we have. Sid Thompson, I'm back at it here. Had a little sabbatical. Been battling with the infamous C word, as we all know. Those who've been following me, I've been putting some posts up. I've been dealing with cancer, but we're on the right path. We're back at it here. And I have a guest that I think you're all going to like. I normally have been doing the Roseville World, the 218ers up there, but there's definitely ties to that section of the state, having played with a few people from my hometown and over in the Evil Neighbor World. This gentleman, I'm just going to hopefully not butcher his background because he's got a long, extensive background here. Mr. Sykes is from Dawson Creek, BC, where he played his minor hockey up there in BC, some 1,500 plus miles away from where he ended up playing college hockey. Throughout his career in the collegiate career, he had an exemplary college career, scoring 98 goals, 90 assists. I believe that's fourth in all time of goals, total, not for points, but for goals in UND. And I'll call him the Fighting Sioux. I'm wearing my jersey, my pullover today because of when he played. I can still call him that. So he scored many goals up there for the Sioux, winning two national championships in the 79-80 and then in the 80-82. We'll talk about that. Um, was awarded the Cliff Fido Purper Award in 1981. Highest honor was 1980. That was his highest honor was 1982 NCAA tournament. He was MVP, I believe, in that. Played in NHL with almost 500 games, 400 plus games, and played with some interesting characters. We'll say the Los Angeles Kings and the Jets. He was named to the NCAA 50th anniversary team and in the inducted into the 1997 UND Hall of Fame. Like I said, quite extensive career playing for UND and in the NHL. I'm very glad and I'm happy to welcome to my, my initial back in the saddle, so to speak, broadcast, Phil Sykes. So I'm going to bring him in here. And Phil, hey, pleasure to have you on here. Thanks so much for doing this with me and talking a little hockey.
Good morning, Sid. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to get a former Sioux. As I'll still say Sioux. As I'm wearing the old Sioux headband here. And I think you can see I got a jersey up there too. It's behind the door. I'll have to close the door to see it, but I do have a Sioux jersey up there, being from up north. Although I
Yeah,
know there was a
we've got
few of
the
the northern
we
boys.
got the band of brother Sioux head quarter zips, and that's never going away.
There'll always be that in my mind. So even though they're cheered for them, but I know a few Roseville guys who you played with as well in the pros. Went down to the Gophers, of course, and had a good career. So the way I usually do this is pretty casual. I talk about where we started because that's what it's all about. Back where we started, kind of. I think of the old Slapshot song where they're on the bus and they play that one. Get back to where you started in Dawson Creek. So um, let's talk about your minor hockey. I'm going to throw that up here first of all. This arena here, which some people aren't familiar, but what I know you are, is the Memorial. And where we got, there it is right there. So this is the most there. This arena here, yeah, it's also like the Rosa Memorial. They got a lot of memorial arenas throughout the North American continent here. Can you talk about growing up in Dawson Creek and your minor hockey and how it all started and coaches and such that you know, you look back and said, boy, he was really an influence on my young career.
Yeah, it is really posting that picture. Really amazing how much that does look like the Rosa Arena, although it's not 55 steps to the Legion. So that's
Yeah, yeah, very
another
convenient.
55 steps to the Catholic Church. It's perfect setup up there. Most amazing place I've ever been for. That's the real town of hockey. But anyways, growing up in Dawson, outdoor rink across the field at the school, and played with all these guys every night, and it was either ball hockey or what have you. And eventually got into minor hockey, and things went too well. There's another friend of mine, dear friend of mine. He never ended up playing anywhere in hockey, but he's had a wonderful, successful life. And I've always thought, growing up with him, one of the better hockey players I ever played with. Anyways, we started playing junior way, way, way too young in Dawson Creek, junior B, which is nowadays, I think it's like tier three. So we're at 13, turning 14, and remember our two captains were 21 years old with kids. So I'm not sure as a parent I would have allowed my son to do that, but it was the way it went back in those days. So played, I think it was 5 years a junior, and then Jerry LaFond, who was also, and he actually just passed away, was from Dawson. Danny Brennan, another Sioux, is from Dawson. So we actually have three um, people that played at the University of North Dakota. And Jerry played with Gino Gasparini, who was just coming in, and said he'd give him a good word because I was a walk on. So I walked on to North Dakota to start my college career. I actually thought I was going to Denver. That's where I thought he was. So
I was going to say that I did a little due diligence, in researching the background, and was there something about writing letters or something that were you sending? You're going to send them to Denver or something? I was told, and then you found out
well,
you was actually meant to.
I sort of had my newspaper clippings and I was sending them everywhere in the States. And I really, when you think about North Dakota, they don't have any trees, they don't have any lakes. It's freezing cold, but they have a bunch of rabid fans and it's a wonderful place. And I'm so thankful I ended up there. But Denver or Colorado College sounded a whole lot more interesting when you were a young kid.
Yeah, it's not flatland, right? You got the beautiful mountains out there,
That's right.
but you're right. The rabid fans, and now they got that wonderful Ralph Engelstad Stadium arena now. That's probably the pinnacle of arenas now. They did that up wonderful. Can you imagine them playing back in? You look at the old stadium, you played the old arena back then, and now. I mean, can you compare those two? It's just amazing how that new facility is.
So I'm right in the middle because, there's enough guys, like I said, UND Fighting Sioux are so connected throughout the ages. And, I still have friends, Lefty Kern, guys like that played in the barn. So you have the barn, and then I have my arena, which we used to joke that it's kind of like Dodger Stadium. You could see yourself in the cement. It's so clean. And it was a beautiful college stadium. And then the Ralph, I just watched a podcast with one of the players taking somebody on a tour, a Chicklets podcast, I think, of the
Yeah.
Ralph. And I couldn't even understand all the training room equipment and facilities that they have. It's I can't imagine. I mean, there's probably no better recruiting tool in the world.
Amazing. I mean, if you look at that and you look at some of the other facilities, like why wouldn't you want to go there? It's like an NHL facility,
Oh, it's way above
So,
that.
oh yeah, it's amazing. I saw that exact same interview. I can't remember one of the Chicklets guys did that. You're right. So let's talk about the career starting there at UND. I mean, the first year you were there, didn't you guys lose in the championship, and then the next year you end up winning it? Am I correct in that, or how was that, or was that prior to you going there?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah, no, that's exactly right. I got a little story from that game. So I had okay freshman year. Played fourth line. I think I had 7 goals, which whatever. But I didn't get to play in that game, and that frustrated me a lot. And so in the second period, I was going in the locker room, and Kerry Eads had his laying on the floor on his back with his skates up on the bench. I don't know what he was doing, getting ready. And I tried to break my stick, slamming it into the floor, and it didn't break. It deflected and cut the top of his head. So I almost got in by killing one of
By
my two.
default. Well, it's probably
But
good because I asked. You probably should have because I asked him to be on an interview last year or whatever because he was too busy. He said, "Well, give me an extra." So maybe I'll get him this year.
yeah, yeah. Good luck with the bird.
Okay. From what I see, yeah, he's a busy guy. He's all over the place. But so let's talk about that team in 79-80 then when you won it. Let's pull up that picture. This is the group of guys. I mean, you look at that club. I mean, your goaltenders and some of these players. Can you talk about some of your teammates that were just so prevalent in that series and throughout the year, making it to the title game, and then of course winning it. You being one of the consummate top players as well. But what a crew you had there in the squad. I mean, I look at first of all, the one guy that sticks out in my mind from a defensive perspective as a goalie, Craig Ludwig was on that squad, I believe.
Yeah,
What can you say about this group of guys? And before I forget, before I go back, I'm going to show this picture too, the reunion picture. So it's the same group of guys about, almost how many years later? I don't know when this was taken. Was this
30.
last year? So that's same crew, but few years later with a lot less hair and a lot less mustaches, right?
Right. So I'll start off by talking about them. And the year before, we're playing in Detroit against the Gophers, and it ended up going to overtime. And um, Kevin Maxwell, wonderful player. He skating down the ice, a little bit of a breakaway, and hits the post, and almost immediately somehow Broughton gets the puck and goes the other way and chips it over Bobby Iabuchi to win the cup for them. And we had sour grapes. They were certainly, them in Wisconsin were our enemies for my 4 straight years, that's for sure. And we rode home on the bus thinking, well, at least we won the league. So, but the next year we made our amends.
Yeah. And that, obviously that's that goal that Neil scored. I remember that, and that's one of them they always show that that's the one where he's sliding, right? And he chips it over, falling down. Amazing
Exactly.
goal, but yeah.
Yep.
And before I
Amazing
go on to the next
player.
thing, but yeah, you talk about the Sioux, the Badgers, and the Gophers. I miss that those rivalries. There were some bloodbaths, right? Back in the day, watching those games and you guys playing. Um,
100%. And
it's not there anymore.
no, well, they almost, with the whole Big Ten deal, that was just so sad to see what happened. But everybody's starting to recover now. But I mean, back in those days, trust me, the Gophers were really tough. I mean, they had the exact same setup as we did. We had a couple of lines that were, could play with anybody, and then two more tough lines and good goaltending, good D, and the Gophers were identical. And eventually, um, so were the Badgers. My last 2 years when they were the bigger force.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that one. But in that title game in 79-80, I mean, first of all, who'd you face that first round? Was it Dartmouth or excuse me, I forget it. Northern Michigan
No,
was the
no,
first. There was no.
Dartmouth first, and
Okay,
in that game, um, our center iceman and captain and incredible leader Mark Taylor actually broke his collarbone running into the goalpost, and so I think that was maybe the third period, and he certainly didn't play the next night, and so we were a little bit shorthanded. But that team, I would be willing to bet it was the most successful team in every way. We're incredibly close. We just lost a couple of our teammates for the first time who passed away, but I would say if you wanted to go head to head with how well everybody's done financially, it was just truly an amazing team, and championship teams stay connected, and we certainly do almost too much, but it's a blast.
well, yeah, and the memories that it's we're getting older, and that's why I love doing this too. Is bringing up people's past. That a lot of younger players, younger kids. When I did my very first interview with Don Ross, former UND and All American there, and then the Hall of Fame as well. A lot of the younger players now coming up don't know some of the guys like yourself and quite the careers that you had. And I really appreciate being able to do this. Talk about the past, and I want to talk about that game. By the way, that 79-80 game again, that title game. Not a bad game for you there. You had one, two, three assists and a goal, so 4 points in that game. And Dougie
Four and
Schmale
one,
must have been what's that? Four
four
and
and
one?
one.
Oh my goodness, I must have missed one. Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, he did. There it is. I'm looking at the stats right now. And then of course he played with Dougie Schmale. I think was Dougie at Winnipeg when you were there. I mean, he must have been the line mate. Not a bad tandem there. You guys tallied quite a few points in that game. They're in a huge championship game. So
Yeah, he's
quite amazing.
amazing. He's just the fastest person I'd ever seen until I ran into Bobby Carpenter, but he was really good, got a lot of opportunities and cashed in, and that's it. Just give him the puck and say thank you.
And he's gone. And he's
Yeah.
gone. And you did have some Roosevelt ties on that team too, because I know Frankie Burgraff, of course, and Frankie reminds everybody about the title game. When people bring up talking about Minnesota or whatever, he says, "Well, I got a title, so I
Yeah.
got to give that," and had that Roosevelt connection there as well. So moving
Frankie
on then,
is, I'm sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Frankie is one of four of us that are we're there for both titles.
Very
Dean,
fortunate. Very
Dean
fortunate.
Decision and Kerry Eads.
Not too many people can say they played on two national title teams. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to that next one, and that next title game against the Badgers. Something I found amazing when I was looking at that title game against the Badgers. If I'm correct, I think in that '82 game there was like 12 players, 11 players from both teams. They ended up playing in at least 400 NHL career games. I mean, correct. I look at some of those names. You had yourself, Craig Ludwig, Dave Tippett, James Patrick, Troy Murray, I believe, John Casey as well, and of course I can't forget Chris Chelios and Bruce Driver and Mullen and Flatley. I think I may have missed somebody, but Zombo, of course. I forgot Rick Zombo, of course. So that in that game, I mean, talk about a loaded championship title game between you two. That's pretty amazing. You look at those squads.
Yeah, and I think the only difference again was Gino's Sioux Bible of grit that allowed us to, you know, to win and be successful because uh, they were probably, and they proved that during the regular season. They whipped on us a couple of times pretty good, and um, that was a big win for us. But again, that's Sioux pride right there.
And in that title game, how many points did you have in that one, Phil? Uh, one assist, a goal, two goals and an assist, I believe. If I'm looking at not a bad title game.
I think I had 3 goals.
Three goals. My God, I'm looking at the wrong. I got. I'm looking up the stats. See, that's me. I mean, I'm getting old. Too many pucks to my head. I actually stopped in the day. So that's amazing. I mean, I, what can you guys say? I mean, you had two championships, and you look at those games and the goals and the points. That's pretty amazing. There's only been, as far as hat tricks, I think in NCAA championship history, I think a total of how many games they've had, there's something about 10 or 15 different players have done it. So that's pretty amazing. And all tournament. But about those teams, when I talked about some of those players, any stories? I mean, obviously, when we talk about that squad that you played on, I didn't know. I want to throw up that picture too, that championship game team from that 81, 82. These guys here. Can you talk about some of the players you played with there that really, some moments that stood out in your mind going into that, making it to the title game, but just in general, you talked about Gino saying your Sioux Bible and the grit. There were some instances that just stick out throughout the year that you could bring up.
Yeah, I mean, we literally, and I'll actually send you that link. Uh, we literally just went to the Hall of Fame induction for Dave Tippett last weekend up in Grand Forks, and so um, Dean Decision, Dusty Carroll, myself, Kerry Eads, we went back specifically, really hosted by Dave Tippett, Tipper, and so. Um, he obviously had an incredible NHL career, especially even on the coaching side of things, and he was
Yes.
so smooth and cool about his acceptance speech and there was a bunch of really young, I believe him and Shervin, there's a bunch of freshmen we had that year, and they matured throughout the year, and like you said, they're all incredible. James Patrick and Craig Ludwig had, I think they have 40 years in the NHL between them. I think 21 and 19, maybe something like that. It's
They
crazy.
played a long time. I know. I listened to Knuckles Nyland interviewed James Patrick, and there's quite the stories there about that guy. I guess he was a heck of a skater, from my understanding.
Yeah, oh, he's phenomenal. A matter of fact, the only time I ever seen him get beat one on one was we were playing a little pro camp deal, and Tony Herkus, of who I think is the best
Circus.
college hockey player ever. The Herkus Circus is amazing, and he turned him inside out. But I've never seen that. I've only seen that one time, and that was, like I said, just at a little mini camp.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, I
If I
got
had to
what
say, I think for both teams, um, the amount of consistency that in effort that Gino knew he was going to get every night is probably what defines those teams because my first championship team in 80, uh, Gino was petrified because first of all, we didn't lose 2 games in a row. a weekend series. We always at least split, and then we didn't lose. I think certainly not after Christmas. So Gino was worried we were gonna have a sour game. He wouldn't have minded if we had a dropped one somewhere along the way just to get back to reality, but we were just too consistent, too well led by Mark Taylor, Mark Journey, those guys.
And you mentioned Gino. He was the inductor, was it Howie Baker, the legend of college hockey here. And I remember him. And now his son is involved with hockey. Tony, I think he's with, I don't know who he's with now, but he's scouting. He was with Sioux Falls. And he's been very actively involved with hockey too. So the Gasparini name is still carried on in the hockey world. I don't think I threw this picture up. Which title was this here? I mean, how does this picture here, what you
That's
would,
80. That's Brad Cox
okay,
and Erwin Martin. So and there's Ludwig right behind Brad
yeah,
Cox there on the right.
pretty
The
right there.
we have a uh, all years reunion next weekend up in Grand Forks. So
Oh,
I think it's a wonderful idea. Colton Sanders was putting it together, and so there's quite a few uh, guys coming from quite a few different years. So it's pretty fun. We were hosting. I think it was my '82 season uh, Lefty's team, one of Lefty's old winning teams, John Marks. There was a, a bunch of great old hockey players there, and they all went uh, down to the pub and left all their wives with us, and we took them over to the east side, and they didn't get home till 2 o'clock in the in the morning. They're Lefty and all the husbands were looking for their wives. They were gone.
you took him out of the town. So speaking of that, back in college days, what was the old hangout back in? Was it Peppercorn or what was the place you guys used to go to? What was your go-to place in college when you first went to UND?
Uh, there was a level 7, and I think the Spud were over on the east side because of the drinking age. And then, always every time you had to stop at the Red Pepper to grab a bite to eat on the way home. And I remember watching, it's jam packed full of people, watching people writing checks for like $2.10 to pay for their food. It's just stuck in my mind. I just can't imagine writing a check. But anyways,
I don't think people even know how to write a check now. The youth of today, like, what's a checkbook? What's a
yeah,
checkbook?
right,
They wouldn't know
exactly.
what that is. So,
We play
before
golf,
I
and
move,
my sons, when they're done, if I owe them money, they just make me Venmo it to them.
Venmo or PayPal, whatever it is, yeah, I keep saying, well, if you have Venmo, I said, no, I don't have Venmo. I have PayPal, but now there's so many different new things now. But um, I wanted to mention that 7980, by the way, because I was actually, I think I was a peewee back then, a young buck, and we used to sell chocolate. I think it was door to door for fundraiser, and I was one of the top salesmen. So I was able to go watch you guys play the Team USA, I believe. I think Iwabuchi. When you mentioned Bob Iwabuchi was playing goal, but on that 80 team, my defenseman coach Gary Ross was still playing. He hadn't been cut yet, so that's pretty cool to see him and Neil playing. And you did you Team Canada, were you ever an opportunity to play, or at least did you try out for that team? And maybe for the Olympics, can you talk about that at all, or where was that? Because I mean, representing your country is quite a thing as well.
Yeah, so not even the slightest. The My second year, again, I was a walk-on, so completely under the radar. My second year went a lot better, and especially how it finished up. Again, a injury, which it's almost ironic. Kerry Eads got hurt, and so I ended up playing on his line, which was Mark Taylor and Doug Smale. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Mark Taylor got hurt. But so Brad Berry, the current coach, started this little the best line Sioux line hockey pitcher wall of fame downstairs in the locker room. And so it starts with me, Mark Taylor, and Doug Smale, which we just did our 82 reunion, and Kerry seen it for the first time, and he was just going crazy because he really did play all season long
Yeah,
with them, except for the last two
that
games.
should have been me. That should have been me. Well,
Oh, it's
well,
funny.
yeah. Well, we could talk all day about Sioux and championships and games there, but pretty just amazing career and amazing experience. And like I say, there'll always be the Sioux in my opinion, and how you stand on that. But your career then, when you moved on, you weren't drafted, were you? You went and moved into the NHL, a different path as an undrafted player, if I'm correct, playing little minors. You had a cup of coffee, but really the year that you hopped on to the NHL was more 84, 85, if I remember correct, in the NHL with the Kings.
Yeah, so again, like you said, I think it was maybe even a year after me the first year, and then Adam Oates, and there's somebody else the second year, where, the Americans had won the Olympics, and that changed the whole, you know, situation for college kids, and suddenly, wow, we can stick them there. They can grow up, they can get an education and mature, and then we don't have to pay them like they had to pay the Canadian junior guys. So that's when that really started to get exciting, and players, started to get noticed. But yeah, we played the American Olympic team, the Canadian Olympic team, and the Japanese Olympic team that year. So that was pretty cool opportunity for us at UND.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, being able to play those games, and like I said, what an experience! And who would have thunk that the USA went on to win the gold that year? I think but although they beat you in that game, if I remember, 6-1. Looking back, um, at the scorecard, but I remember very little about the game being that young. But so going on, then I'm going to pull up a picture of it's not your rookie card picture, but let's take a look at this young man right here. Because that's who you started your career with. You were in like New Haven. You were with the minors for a couple of years. We had like maybe 10 games or something, if I recall. But then I think this is the 84-85 card. I'm not sure, but look at that young buck right there. So
Yeah, so
this,
exactly what you said. So I was a free agent. I got to negotiate with all the teams. I thought LA was the best opportunity to play sooner than later. Um, but went there after we won the national championship in '82 down to LA for the playoffs. And that's when Daryl Evans scored the miracle on Manchester goal, which he was also a left winger. So that kind of put me fifth line kind of deal, and down in the minors, like you said, for a couple of years until I earned my spot. And eventually, Pat Quinn was the new coach, and um, he was phenomenal. Probably one of my best hockey coaches ever. And yeah, I got a chance to play then for a while.
so yeah, for a while, that first year in 82-83, you had 7 games there, and then 83-84, so a total of 10 games. But New Haven is where you made your mark there. Not a bad year in the minors, 71 games, you had 45 points, 19 and 26. A few PIMs too, under 11. So you probably had a scrap or two in the minors. And then you started out, it says 83-84. There was 77, another 66 points. But then that first year in 84-85, full season, 79 games, a total of 32 points on that squad. I looked at that squad. I'm like, man, you had Marcel Dion, Bernie Nichols, and Dave Taylor on that squad. So Hall of Famer Marcel Dion. That's the first Hall of Famer that I want to bring up. How was it to play in that squad with those guys?
It's
I mean, you have
funny.
that any awe? I mean, before sorry to interrupt you, but sometimes as a rookie, whatever, a guy like that, I'm like, wow, this guy, he's a future Hall of Famer. I'm actually playing in the NHL now with a guy like that.
Yeah, it was numbing. But even worse or better than that is Marcel was my roommate. So
Wow.
it's a little difficult to explain, but everybody lived on the beach except for Marcel. So Marcel lived up in the hills, and he was a little bit disconnected uh, from the guys. He was just off doing his own thing, a little bit older, family, stuff like that. And so it wasn't really on purpose, but eventually I made Marcel go out to dinner with us and stuff like that. I do remember we went around Christmas, excuse me, in New York, And we checked into the hotel, and he was so mad that we had these tiny little single beds that let's go to dinner, Mars. No, I'm not coming. I'm going to go do a little shopping for Lisa and the kids, and that's it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll be back shortly. So go back in those days, no phones, nothing. And I come back to my room and I open the door and I sneak in. I take my big trench coat off and I see some of the stuff on my bed, and I'm thinking, well, why would Marcel put this um, presents on my bed, not on his bed or whatever. So I go in the bathroom. I'm starting to get changed to get ready for bed, and I don't have my shaving kit or anything. And all of a sudden, it dawns on me, that's not Marcel sleeping over there. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I bail out of there, get dressed, bail out of there as quick as I can, go down to the front desk, find out where Mars had moved to, go back up into his room, jump in bed with him. I'm like, I could have been shot. This is crazy. I can't believe you
But
did that.
what
But no
did he get a
phone.
screech?
So
So he went to get a larger room? Is what he bigger
yeah,
beds than that? Is
yeah,
that
exactly.
and it,
Didn't
that,
tell me.
yeah, yeah, that could have been a rude awakening. Wake somebody up and like, oh, we call. It would have been yeah.
That guy was probably as afraid as I was.
Like what's going on? Some guy in a room, had a key. The key code. I'm sure back in the day they had those different key code. I mean, they had regular keys. Not these key code things you put in the door now.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So it obviously worked.
yeah, yeah. I got to throw a picture up from that 84-85 team. So this is the squad I was talking about where you really got your mark. We played that first full season. I see that some of those players
Yeah.
there around there.
So what
I
was
like
really
Phil.
cool about that team for me was uh, we got to go play in the World Championships in Russia. What happens is it's only the teams that are out of the playoffs, excuse me, and we were out, and the Islanders. So the large Pat Quinn was the coach, and a large amount of the players were from each of those respective teams. And so Pat selected me to go with them, which was the most incredible honor in my life to play for Team Canada, just like you said.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you get the Olympics, but the World Championships, and it's a pretty big deal. I mean, you see that still going on today, where you get knocked out of the playoffs and they're able to play in that in those games. So looking
Yeah,
at the career of them,
the last night in town, we were all at the bar, and Jimmy Fox and I uh, needed to get home because the bus was leaving early, 6 o'clock in the morning. We're in the middle of nowhere, Russia, and there's no traffic, no cars. And finally, I had to lay down on the road to get a car to stop because Foxy thought we were going to die. So eventually, we made it back. We were actually there when Chernobyl happened. So we didn't
oh
find out
really?
about that until, yeah, 3 days later. We vectored, thank goodness, around the nuclear site to get back
Wow.
to, I think it was Germany before heading home.
Yeah, that's not an experience you want to remember too well or too close up, so to speak. So, speaking of Jim Fox, I mean, he's made a nice career after hockey for himself, broadcasting. That's one guy that's done a heck of a job in the broadcast booth as a color guy.
Yeah, yeah, he's done fabulous, and we're great friends. We've seen them often. We literally have spent, Kathy and I have spent the last couple, 3 years visiting teammates. So we went to see Marcel, we went to see Jay Wells, we went to see Dean Decision, Dusty Carroll. Nobody had been out east, and we've been down to see Jimmy Fox. We have dinner with him every time he comes to town, or Troy Murray comes to town for hockey games. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, she made note to that. So yeah, a little small town Rosa girl able to take and have dinner, stay at Marcel Dion's house. Quite a story there.
Yeah.
Be able to meet some people. I wanted to hop to the next year as we move along with your career because there's a character or two on that team. One guy that I had, he played with obviously Butsy Erickson was on that squad. He played 55 games, but Dave Tiger Williams was on that squad. I mean, what a character. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, Tiger Williams. What any Tiger Williams stories? Haven't played with him. I mean, that guy was, known for when he scored a goal, was riding a hockey stick. And today, I think some people still try to replicate that. But um,
Yeah, there's
I
there's absolutely nobody I have ever met that has done a more incredible job of promoting himself than he has. And he's, I don't know, 90% bluff, but that 10% could kill you. And so you just never know. And that year we won this a stroll. What was the beer? Some beer had a contest for the best power play penalty kill. And so he came, I don't, somewhere during the season. So we weren't going to divide up his share by the amount of games he played. We got a full share. So we're done with the season. We go out to the year-end party, spend all the fine money and that whole deal. And we're in a nice little pub in Manhattan, and they got a guy playing the piano like uh, over in the other corner, and Tiger doesn't like him for some reason. He's had too much to drink. So he crawls up the beam, goes across the roof fixtures, whatever, and then drops down on the back of the Scary Carrie Carlisle was the guy's name. And the police took us all home.
Sounds like some stories back in the day. I can't imagine. Nowadays, you can't do anything like that because obviously the cell phones. You'd be yeah.
Yeah, we're very,
Um,
very fortunate not to have any of those deals. It was a lot more fun. Uh, Great locker rooms. It's that fraternity of the locker rooms by far, and that's why all this visiting. I mean, like, this is a conscious effort. We've gone to see Gord Shervin. We're trying to find as many players that I played with as possible and go see them because we're getting old.
and that's good. I mean, that's a good thing to do because memories and yeah, especially like I said, me going through what I went through, I just you really appreciate life a lot more when things like that happen. So, and you're grateful for a lot of things. So, I wanted to hop in. I mentioned Marcel. I mean, I talked about the career that you had and the career that some of these guys that you played with. Um, this year, 86, 87, not the best on the record for the team. But you played with, Marcel was still there. He still racked up 74 points. But then there's a young guy by the name of Luke Robitaille was on the squad with you there. So it just gets better and better. Some of these guys that, a few Hall of Famers that you've been playing with. How about Lucky Luke, as they would call him? How was he as a player?
He was great. He was also my roommate.
Jeez.
So Luke and I and Steve Duchesne, we would go to movies, and Luke picked up the language very quickly, but Steve was a little further in Quebec from Sept-Îles. So it took him a while longer, but he was, I remember, I think his first uh, training camp, probably his first game, he got in a fight with Dan Brennan, and it was like a one punch affair. And I guess Luke probably ended up doing a little better than Dan Brennan, but still Dan's claim to fame. And um, Luke is one of the most happy, nicest man that's ever lived, and earned a lot like Charlie Simmer, a big left winger, but Luke's hands, he had great hands and turned into obviously an incredible left winger and Hall of Famer.
Yeah, not a bad career.
But a
You
way better
mentioned.
person than he was hockey player.
Well, you look at someone, it just seems like the type of guy, be kind of a happy-go-lucky, good guy to be around. When you
Oh,
kind of get that impression. That's the impression I got when I first seen him. I've never met
100%
him, never met him, but you
fabulous.
look at somebody and you get that. So, I look at another guy who's been around the league and coaching and playing, and I think doesn't get enough regard. But he played over 1,000 games. Was Dave Taylor, that you
Yeah.
had played with. Well, you mentioned Charlie Simmer, but I can't be remiss not mention Dave Taylor. That's another guy that played as many games as
Yes.
he did and been around hockey.
He's my favorite ever. He's works
Oh, really?
hard. He just went into the American Hall of Fame last year. Um, just Clarkson, last draft pick guy, right winger. That he's all world. I think he's probably my favorite role model that I ever played with.
Oh, that says something. That's amazing. I didn't know that. So that's pretty cool. You mentioned brought that up. So I'm glad I mentioned his name. So before I hop into when did you start playing this? The 88? Yep, yep, yep. Okay. I got to bring up something here, Phil. If I don't, I'd be remiss. I talked about, so you, Dion, Robitaille, guys like Dave Taylor. But I got to throw up something, and I want you to talk about this. I got a little clip here, and I'm going to throw up, and I want you to, because he eventually becomes your teammate. Let's see if I can find it, and let's
Not
talk
for
about this
long.
because the guy narrating it here. Yeah, that's right, because he moved on after that. Where do I have my clip of him here? By golly, here it is. That's
Harry Curry and Phil Sykes. Now watch this. You're going to see a conga line here. I never saw anything like this in hockey before. I don't know what the heck they're doing. Curry's trying to get Sykes up. Grant says, get out of my crease here, you guys. Now the conga line's just about to start. Here it is here. Somebody break it up. Somebody do something. This is getting embarrassing. Wait says, get out of here. Well, Sykes is not going to leave. Curry, he don't know what to do. He's never been in a fight in his life before. Now they don't know what to do. Sykes says, just let me go so I can get out of here. This is embarrassing. Little tap in the nose. I mean, this is something, isn't it? That's the closest you're ever going to see Wade in a fight. Harry Curry and Phil Sykes.
Sorry about that. I had to bring that one up. So can we talk
Yeah.
about that little? I just love Don Cherry. Rest his soul. Great guy, but the conga line, as he called it, that was a good line. So can we discuss that before we go into him actually becoming a teammate of yours?
Yeah. So, in LA, Edmonton, well, we were the only warm city. So most teams would come down on vacation, be waiting for us. We'd be on a 3-week road trip, come back to them, ready to play. But they were incredible, just unbelievable team and talent. So we played them in the first round of the playoffs, and um, my job was to shadow Gretzky. And for him, he didn't get as many points as normal, but I don't think it was the right thing to do. And Gretzky certainly hates the whole shadowing idea, but um, it was what it was, and it boiled over, and he had lost it, and so it broke out. I do remember. I think somebody wrote a book, and I had a little blurb in there, and I remember telling him that my sister was tougher than he was. So it's probably the only fight. I probably lost every other fight, but that one.
I did have a few of those I was going to bring up, but we didn't bring up. I had to bring up the Gretzky one because there was a few clips I saw I was going to maybe show you. But I think that was probably equal. Let's put it this way: he had at least Curry there, but him and Neil, their fight wasn't much of a fight either there, Phil. So those
Yeah,
two went at it. So I
yeah.
just had to bring that one up there. So, but now speaking of that, you had that, and then going into 88, 89. Then they bring in Gretzky and Nichols and Robitaille, 168 points, 150 points, and 98 points. And Duchesne didn't do too bad. He was 75, so not bad playing with that crew. So that squad also had, of course, you had some protectors on that squad with Ken Baumgartner, and you had Jay Miller come over from, he was a Bruin. I remember him back in the day. And then, of course, Marty McSorley and Krushelnyski. So you had some tough guys to protect the great one. Um, how was that experience? Like I said, Hall of Famer. You just move on from one player to the next, playing with the Kings, and the great one coming to you after you had that little scrap. What did he have to say about that when you guys became a teammate?
Well, not too much because I don't know if it was very few games later before I was shipped off to Winnipeg, which was considered, the worst place to play in the
Winter peg,
NHL.
right?
Yeah, so go figure. Um, yeah, I'm sure my friend Wayne might have had a little something to do with that.
Yeah. Well, he had 23 games with him, at least I saw. It looks like he had there, but yeah, that's the business part of it, I guess, right? And it just shows you how influential some players can be. And of course, when you have the name Gretzky or Messier, they're going to listen to you. So
Yeah,
moving on, then
they got it. Just goes on and on. I think they have 7 or 8 legit Hall of Fame players. Um, you know, just an amazing setup and draft and situation. I do remember meeting. Where were we? I think we were at Jim Fox's uh, place, and I got in a fight with maybe it was Mike Krushelinski, who really
Ooh,
is a super nice guy, not a tough guy, not a mean guy at all. But we met maybe at a Christmas party at Jim Fox's place later, and he was going, "No way, you're too tiny." So I only weighed 145 pounds. I was 6 feet tall, but my body, it took, like I said, I lost all my fights, so it took a real beating and cross checks over the 10-year period.
yeah, I was going to say back in the day, I mean, you get away with murder nowadays. You do anything. A good check nowadays, boom, the guy's going after him and fighting him. The guy played, got good open ice check. It's a way different era that different type of hockey they play now. But
Yeah, it's
kind
good.
of wind.
I agree with it. I can only imagine. I mean, Tony Herkus had a pretty decent pro career anyways, but I can't imagine him playing nowadays with this kind of a game. That'd be right up his alley.
It's very wide open. It's made for the speed game and smaller guys too. I mean, you see some of these smaller guys are really doing well. But then there's come playoff time, the grit. Like Gino's talked about the Sioux grit. You need that. You need that to win a championship, and that does come into play in the playoffs and that long run. So,
You don't want
so
to
yeah,
play somebody from the southeast because they're all big
oh,
and bad and mean there.
sure seems like doesn't it? They haven't been in the cup how many times the past few years. So then, like I said, you got moved. You got shipped out over to. You played with Moncton a few games with New Haven, and did they? So a New Haven affiliate. I'm still confused by that. So was New Haven when I saw that in the AHL? Was that were they the Kings or the Jets? I wasn't quite sure because you were with the Jets for 48 games in 89, 90, and then went to New Haven. So explain that to me because it was a shared affiliation. I didn't know how that all worked there,
Yeah,
Phil, when I
that's
saw that.
exactly what it was, which is really,
Okay.
different or weird. But I Robbie Fedoruk sent me down the coach, and then Winnipeg traded for me.
Okay.
So that's just how that went. And that's where it was funny. Troy Murray, myself, um, Aaron Broughton, and Butsy all ended up there together, doing crosswords on the bus. It was hilarious. And uh, it,
I
it was
saw that.
really, really, really hard to. Uh, I could never like Bratz as a gopher or Butsy, but I liked them as people. So
Well,
we
I
got
know,
past it.
gotta get along. And that's the past, yeah. So on that squad, again, we talk about Hall of Famers. You may have went to Winterpeg, that not many people but now it's a popular place. I mean, they're in the thick of things now.
You're
Um,
darn right.
they,
They're a great organization. And it's funny because another friend of mine, who used to be the equipment manager, Craig Heisinger, he's the GM for the minor league team. And, he was the equipment manager when I was there. So he's done well as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And they have a good thing going on there with the Moose. The Moose their affiliation right in town there as well, so it makes it a little easier to move guys up and down. Um, but
I
going
got a
back to what I
good
was going to bring,
story about that.
go ahead, go ahead.
Well, an interesting story, and you'll be able to appreciate it. So, because I walked on to North Dakota, I didn't live with the hockey players. I lived with the football players over in McVeigh. And, in a long circle of things, the wide receiver that played for the Sioux at that time, now owns, well, not just the Bloom Bombers, but the Jets as well. And so,
Hmm.
small world connection, but
Wow,
yeah,
that is a
he's
small.
a
That's
North
done very
Dakota
well.
football player.
Done very well for himself. A little networking. Maybe if you want to get back in the game as a GM or something, or a scout up there. And I do follow the Bombers. Having grown up on the border, people joke about talk about the NFL, but I still follow the Bombers, and they're doing pretty well. They're in the playoffs again this year, so in the
Yeah.
run. But they've been in the
Pat,
Grey Cup the past few years.
yeah. That was
Um,
interesting. We had in Winnipeg, we had Smith, the GM was part of the whole Russian workout programs and everything Russia, Russia, Russia. And uh, those are really interesting times. I remember going to training camp and Richard Wills, what was Richard's last name? The
Rick
Simmons.
Wilson.
No,
Oh,
Richard
Richard Simmons.
Simmons.
Richard Simmons. Okay.
Rick
Workout.
Wilson was my assistant coach. He was fabulous in North Dakota too, by the way. But so all the guys couldn't get into this whole aerobics thing and everything that was happening. And eventually, we were riding the bikes for testing and training. And times has so much changed, just like you
Oh
said.
my
These
goodness. Yeah.
kids nowadays.
They're year-round training. Back in the day, I remember Bobby Hall, they had a picture of him on the cover. I think it was Sports Illustrated or somewhere. His forearms back in the 70s, and the picture he had two hay bales, and that was his workout in the summer. And they talked about we'd go to camp. And that was our job to get in shape then. I mean, we played softball in the summer, drank beer. We didn't worry about it. Now they're training just unbelievably year-round. It's just amazing. These
Yeah, go
athletes
out for
are,
a glass of coconut milk.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, I think in some cases, you look at some of these athletes, they're almost too healthy because they have no fat on their body. And that's why some of them get injured because it's all muscle, and it's
That's
easier to pull muscle.
It's so funny you say that because that's the exact problem I had. My body fat was, they wanted you around 6 to 8%, and I was like unmeasurable. They called me the whippet, just a little skin and bones dog. So they wanted me to put some weight on so that I had some durability.
When you mentioned Whip, but I have an Italian Greyhound. Well, he's getting up there, but he's skin and bones right now too. So I
There you
kind of like
go.
when you
Exactly.
mentioned Whip it. So, but all right, now I keep talking about players and things and experiences, but playing in Winnipeg, I shouldn't say Winnipeg. I grew up in Roseville. It's cold. I'm used to the cold, but rest his soul, hell of a hockey player, Dale Hawerchuk. The experiences playing with that guy when you're in the short period you were there. What kind of man? I mean, I heard nothing but great stories about him as a person as well.
Absolute best captain ever with regards to never being, well, his father would never, he'd get a cowboy boot to his rear end, but he would never get out of line. But he was truly the most humble, nicest superstar that ever lived. Everything you heard is probably not enough due for how incredible he was. And again, just another incredible, fortunate, privileged thing I've had to, witness in my life.
Yeah, and it's sad that he was gone way too early, and that's the thing about it, unfortunately, with disease and stuff. But another Hall of Famer. So, and finishing up then that following year was at 91, 92. The guys finished about 500 there, just one game over. But he had another Hall of Famer there that came in. He was a captain there, but led the team in scoring as a young defenseman. He wasn't that young. He was 27, but came in the league as 18-year-old out of South St. Paul. Phil Housley. I mean, man, it's just amazing. Some of the players he played with from college to pro. That guy, another wheeler and dealer on the blue line. What can you say about Phil Housley and having him as a teammate?
Yeah, it all just, hockey's such a small world, such a small fraternity. And I think that John Paddock was the coach. I believe that we were up 3-0 in the first two rounds, or in the first round of my last 2 years, and lost both of them. And I think it wasn't until somewhat recently that another team has managed to do that once.
Yep,
We did it
yep.
twice, 2 years in a row. So that's the whole white towel started that. And
I was
you
just going
know
to mention the
how
whiteout. Yeah, yeah, the
and
whiteout.
Housley and Randy Carlisle and um, Dave Ellett. We had a good team, and maybe my favorite, kind of like Erickson Ek now. Thomas Steen was a incredibly solid second um, line center that could really do it all right behind Hawerchuk. So we had a good team. Just it always comes down to the playoffs, just like you said, the big tough bodies.
Yeah, definitely. I got a joke and ask you this because there's a guy I follow on Facebook, the left-hander, a leather guy. He makes these koozies. He's a goofy bugger up there in BC. I don't know where BC is from, but he always brings up Bob Essenza. He goes, that's one of the best goalies ever. And he jokingly says he's Bob Essenza. Was he a pretty good tender back there? I remember when I think of the Jets, and as far as guys that stick up in my mind, just because of the nickname was Daniel the Bandit Bertume played with you a little bit too. But was Essenza your goalie for the most part when you were with the Jets those last couple of years?
Yeah, lots. It seems like both LA and Winnipeg, we had great goaltending if they were hot, but that just wasn't always, they just weren't consistent, or that just wasn't always the case. And so, you kind of go on a run where they're stopping everything, and then, you let one or two deflators in, deflatable goals that just drag the whole team down. And that sort of seemed like, well, you make the mistake and lose, you should have closed the series out. We were at home both years, and you lose that game, and it's like, here we go again kind of deal. So,
I can attest to that, having been I'm a card lifetime member of the goalie union, card member, and
yeah, tough job.
standing on your lips, and then of course letting one in that you shouldn't have. They always remember those ones,
Yeah,
and
you
you think
never
back.
want to be a goaltender's parent. I mean, that's the
Oh,
toughest job in the world. And Pierre
yeah,
Lamoureux was my roommate second or third
okay,
year in UND, and he was a real tough little goalie too. And but he has him and Linda have had the 6 children under 5 years old, and the two Lamoureux girls that played for the U.S. Olympic team, and they're my son's favorite players. Just one tied the game, one won it in overtime for the Americans, so it's pretty special. They're from a great family.
was there a son, the netminder too, that played at
Oh,
the Unity?
100%. Yeah.
Yep, that's what I
What,
thought. So
what
Lamoureux
was
name.
his name?
Well, I thought it was Phil Lamoureux as well, and
It
I thought it was
was. I was just teasing with you. That's how Phil got his
you.
name.
You smart Alex. I mean, I had a few pucks. I did stop with my melon, but I
Me
do
too.
remember a
Punches.
few things. So, but yeah, that's part of the game. So you take it, you bumps and bruises. So, but kind of wind it down. I want to try to keep it to at least an hour or so, because I mean, I could talk on it forever. But so, what are you doing nowadays? Are you doing any coaching? Are you involved with, how are you involved with the game, or just kind of enjoying life now and
So
doing the alumni thing, or
yeah, after hockey, I was in the manufacturing business with Mark Chorney up here. So I coached when my sons were playing in the minor hockey, or whatever you want to call it up here, system. And then not that long ago, I went home to take care of my dad during COVID. And so I coached a junior team for a year or two up there. And actually, I did coach a high school team when I was living in Cumberland, Wisconsin. They kind of had a group team or team from 3 or 4 different places. So I kind of stayed a little bit involved, but nothing too major. And so now I am a professional driver. I'm a bus driver in the during the season. Kathy's got a couple more years to go of teaching, so I don't have
okay,
to sit at home and watch Netflix all the time. And then, like I said, all summer long, we're planning trips to go visit people. And you talk about a few pucks to the head. I'm telling you, I had a few punches, and I get pretty, teary-eyed or choked up pretty easily getting older, but that's just how much I appreciate and respect the opportunities and friendships that I got from the game. It's just staggering. I love when we do reunions and our kids now come and they're all in there listening to the stories. They have the time of their life, just, interacting and being all a part of those situations, because they all grew up with us doing that.
sure, sure. And that's the reason I'm doing this. I want to get back, and I used to do a lot of broadcasting when I was living in the city. I got away from it, and I figured, well, I'm going to start interviewing some people from back home to start out. And then lo and behold, Kathy had mentioned I was looking at interviews, trying to get back into it, and she mentioned your name. Like, awesome! I'd love to do that, just to talk a little hockey. I mean, just quite the career. I mean, how many guys can say they played on 2 national championships teams? And I've had a teammate of mine. He actually won a championship. He didn't play much this senior year because he was injured. But John Helgeson, he won there at the Badgers, and then his daughter won one on the women's side. That's pretty cool. And then another friend of mine, Stu Weston, he won a national championship at Bemidji State. Then his son won a Division III national championship at Eau Claire. And the stories and the camaraderie and all this stuff, that just the game of hockey, getting together with people and talking, it's amazing. I mean, it's just so close knit. Like even today, after we're done, you and I are done here, I'm going straight to the arena. They're having a benefit for me, a 3-on-3 hockey tournament. The hockey community is just so closely knit, and that's the amazing thing about this is that you can pick up the phone. I remember teammates of mine, just like you, dude, probably as a kid and in college and high school that I'm in contact with today, still very close knit bond. That's the beauty of the game. I don't think any other game, in my opinion, has that like the hockey community does.
Uh,
I could be wrong, but I think that's pretty
you
much
could
the
be
case.
wrong, but I completely agree. I have, excuse me, I feel like I have certainly all of the 80 and 82 players' phone numbers in my phone, and a whole bunch of uh, roommates from pro hockey that, just are wonderful. We stopped to see Paul McDermott. This is just just a big tough right winger, but he was my roommate, my best buddy, and we just stopped to see him in Ontario at his place last year. It's just spectacular. It's like you just start right up like you never even missed a beat. Start
And
giggling
that's
right away.
bringing up the stories and that, and that's why being from Roseville, I think the one thing that we do, just like you guys have, you talk about your all reunion coming up next week. We have that hockey reunion every 5 years in Roseville, and COVID kind of threw a curveball, but I don't think any other community does that like we do up there. It's pretty amazing. And Warwood has a great get together too for their golf tournament, but just amazing the hockey community. The
It's
one thing I like to do when I finish, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, Paul. There, Paul. You had mentioned something there. You gonna say something?
well, I mean, it's the most amazing community I've ever been in my life. Whether it's golf and or hockey. I think I believe they have 290 players from a town of 2,200 people that have played D1 or better. It's just absolutely staggering, and the engine just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling, and it's the city really does a wonderful job of providing free hockey and free golf for those kids, and it obviously pays dividends. I remember my son had a very, very good team, my oldest son, Aaron, and Bantam, and they were going to state and they played, I forget who we played, doesn't matter. But I remember like it was yesterday that Edina was playing Roseau, and some parents in the crowd were commenting that a couple of the kids' breezers didn't match their helmets or something like that. And I think it was like 5-0 Roseau after the first period. And I just said, you know, that's what happens.
You're
Take people
complaining about
lightly.
it. Yeah, yeah. You don't have to look the greatest, but if you play the game, I've seen some guys don't try. Some goaltenders that I played against. They're like, look at that cripping he's got, like standing on their head. So,
Yeah.
I got to want to wind it down so you get your day going. I got to get my day going, but I got a couple of things I want you to comment on just from your perspective. Now, I haven't played the game, but going back to, I want to ask you about junior hockey today and what Canada Hockey is trying to do. They're actually going to be voting on it in the next 30 days, I believe, where juniors, major juniors up there, whether it be the Q, the Dub, or whoever, the OHL, they can go play college hockey now. What are your thoughts on that? Because that's really going to change the way the game, with NA and USHL. And, I've done some scouting in my day and I'm still doing a little bit of bird dogging and advising how the game is going to be played. But these guys, because when you play juniors, you're paid, and they didn't get squat when they paid back then compared to the NIL now, which is really outrageous. But they can go play college hockey. What are your thoughts on how that's going to affect the game from a college perspective?
I really have no idea. It's frustrating as a fighting Sioux to, have players one and done or 2 years and done and they turn pro. And so you never really end up with a team. Often Boston College or somebody out there has 4-year teams and, they end up winning or end up doing well. The only thing that I can say that I would say is very positive is anytime anybody can get a good education, that can only help. It can't hurt. So, it's way, like you just said, it's way, way, way too complicated now for me. And I don't even know what the nil is really. I don't understand it. I don't know if North Dakota has the opportunity to leverage that to players or how it all portal. It's it's so much different, just like the game. So I'm really out of
Yeah,
touch.
I'm involved with that a little bit with my football guys. We start talking because that's really outrageous where these guys are getting paid, upwards of several $100,000. And a kid just reneged on a contract at UNLV. He stepped back and said, I'm not playing. I was told I was going to get this amount, and they didn't do their jobs.
Unbelievable.
I'm red shirting, so it's pretty crazy. And
Can you
I'm
imagine
sure it'll
being
come.
Arch Manning?
Oh, he's set. He's set no matter what. Think about that. Some of those guys, they're going to make more playing college than making it at the NFL. And
Caitlin
the
Clark.
hockey. Oh my gosh, yeah, exactly. Her endorsements are crazy. But hockey's behind in that regards. I'm sure he'll be catching up. But the portal is another thing too. There's no allegiance to the way it used to be. You went to the school. If you went to another school and transfer, you have to sit out a year. With the portal now, it's like, oh, I don't like it. My coach changed. Boom, I'm gone.
Yeah,
It's
6 different defensemen went to North Dakota last year.
it's a different game. I mean, it's a different game. It's makes recruiting. You're not recruiting freshmen, or we're not well, the juniors now. I mean, juniors are not recruiting a freshman out of high school. You're recruiting a guy that's 21 years old, but um, you're just recruiting through the portal too to fill holes. So it's tough to you don't have that allegiance like you had back in your day with guys sticking around and moving
I
and
think it's
winning
the
championships.
GM for the Vikings. I think he's like, I'm done with this drafting thing. I'm just gonna sign free agents that are known, commodities. And, they seem to be doing okay this year, which of
Yeah,
course is gonna
yeah,
break some Minnesotans' heart, including my boys. But, it's at least you can predict what the outcome should be from past history instead of just drafting. So I don't know.
yeah. It's a crapshoot nowadays. So,
Yeah.
but I do want to end it with this. This is how everybody I talk to, whether former teammate or former Roseau or Ward or whoever, or any guy I've talked to, a pro athlete, college athlete, because I've interviewed some good ones. Um, what advice would you give if someone came up to you, Phil, as a young hockey player or just a young, student, say he's on the bus and say, he's a hockey player and you're going on a trip and Mr. Sykes, what advice would you give me as an athlete, a young athlete? I'm a smallish forward, like yourself, but I'm tenacious. I want to be able to play the game. What would you tell a young skater right now? If he asked you, can you give me some advice on whether it be life or the game of hockey?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would tell him and his parents is don't play hockey all year round. Make sure
Good.
that the season starts and stops. So you've got an end point and then go play whatever else, tennis, golf, every other sport that'll help to develop your hand-eye as well. And just take a break. And then there's the one thing, it'd take a while to explain, but the one thing I think any player, including young, smaller players, can do is learn how to control their breathing and visualize what they want to do on the ice. And it is just, well, the great players like Gretzky, Lemieux, those guys, they have it built in, that they call it the sixth sense, built in automatically. But you can really train yourself to handle every situation just by mentally going through it over and over. And suddenly you're in that position and you don't panic. You make the right play, and then the coach just wants to keep playing you more and more because you're dependable. You're consistent. You could play for the Fighting Sioux.
I'll always be the fighting Sioux, and I appreciate that. So those things you mentioned there, and that's part of hockey culture too, is that a lot of little things, the visualization, the breathing, but off the ice, what you do off the ice versus what you do on the ice, and what people don't see you doing. That's important, and that's that
Yeah, yeah,
visualization aspect. It goes back to John Wooden's and talking about shooting without the ball, and just visualizing you doing that, and it's a big part. So before we let you go, I do want to end it on this. I want to show this video because I want to end it on a highlight goal
oh
for you. I
boy.
didn't show it earlier. We're talking about. I'm just going to show this goal, the national championship game against the Badgers. The Badgers in that game, and I'm going to take and close with this, and I'll come back and we'll finish it up here.
I want to tell you, it's about as physical a game as you're ever going to see. They're not afraid to use their bodies. Each club, very physical.
One by North Dakota. Score on the shot by Phil Sykes, and there it is. The face-off right back to Sykes, the leading scorer for North Dakota. Blasts one in, and the Fighting Sioux lead 2-1.
Last one in, that's a blast from the past. Phil Sykes scoring a goal there versus the Badgers. So, Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to, talk about some memories that you had. And and get me back on in the saddle again. 'Cause it's been a while. Like I said, having my battle, and I still got a long tenuous battle to get my health back, but feeling pretty good now. And this makes me it's a great way to start out the day. So I can't thank you enough. And yeah, I want to end it on that. So any final thoughts before we let you go?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I appreciate the time and being able to tell old stories. I was living in New Orleans for a little bit, and the people there didn't feel like they're very healthy. They ate and drank, and they're too often too much overweight, but they were extremely happy, very positive, and I think stress is the one thing that we got to really work hard on flushing out of our lives, because there's just enough of that to go around anyways. And that's my only little tidbit out there for people, is to take some time to be happy.
There you go. Well, I mean, one thing that'll help doing that is that taking that on-off button, turning it off the TV, and turning on a podcast interview like this, and enjoying some stories that we talked about today. That'd
Yeah.
probably help.
Yeah,
All
my
right.
son sends me them all the time. It's awesome. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it, Phil. Thank you very much.
Have a
That's
great day.
and you bet. I'm Sid Thompson.
Get
Thanks
well.
for watching. So long, everybody.